plan to pass him off as dead and go live together in Tokyo. There he meets Shiki and Akira, who are Inugami's subordinates, and they are an agency that works to solve problems between Kemonos and humans, and although it doesn't look like it, Akira is a man. He has his first job, where they arrive at an apartment where there is a rescue corps who are trying to save this family, and they see that the people who are inside are full of a kind of ticks. Kabane offers to enter and everyone thinks that he will die, but being a yokai they have no blood and cannot do anything, plus he feels no pain, so he saves the people without problem. The main character also thinks that since one of his parents is a Kemono, if he keeps working for Inugami he will have the opportunity to meet them someday, so that will be his new purpose. Incidentally, Shiki tells him that his mother was a spider Kemono, and that is why she has the power to throw silk threads. Inugami orders Shiki to take Kabane to see Inari, a Kemono to whom he asks for favors. So the three of them go to see her and are greeted by Kan, who takes only the protagonist to see her. And when they meet she tells him that she is very interested in the Stone of Life, and that with it the Kemono no longer need to feed on humans to live. So suddenly Kan with a sword cuts off her head and then puts it in a box and disposes of the body. Inari thinks that, if he can produce it in quantity, he will no longer have to live with humans. On the other hand, Kan transforms into Kabane and tries to Kan gets even angrier and tries to catch them, and Kabane gets an idea. She tells him to throw his head towards Kan, that he is going to defeat her, and that's what happens because he bites her shoulder and it turns out that in reality it was all an illusion created by her, so the Prota recovers his body and everything goes back to normal. When they leave the station, Inugami tells them that it was all planned, that he had replaced the stone with another amulet, while Kabane had the real one in his mouth. Kan decides to chase the boys to finish his mission, but she faints on the way and the boys take pity on her, giving her food. Then a mission comes to them from this new client called Yunuro, who tells them that he is in love with a girl and wants to conquer her. She works in a nightclub and her name is Mao-chan. They go to the place and he comments that despite waiting for her many times outside the establishment, he has never seen her leave, but it turns out that it was because she always came out as a cat. So Kabane tells her that this boy wants to meet her, and she tells him that he didn't need to hire detectives, that she wanted to join her herd of slave cats. It seems that everyone who tries to seduce her ends up transforming into a cat, but with Yunuro it doesn't happen because he feels real love. The boys were able to accomplish the mission since Yuno and Mao were able to end up together, and luckily the human Michis are going to return to normal. Inugami gives a new job to the Prota and Akira, where they must go to a river that flows under a city. Some workers have found some dead people, and the mission is to see what is going on, and it turns out that previously in this place inhabited indigenous peoples. At the place, Akira comments to the Prota that he reminds him of his twin brother and tells him that they are Kemonos who can control the ice, and that in the village where they live, most of the inhabitants are women, and that a man is born every 100 years, and that with his brother they opted that when they grew up they would leave, but when they did they both separated. And suddenly they are attacked by this Kemono, but a tanuki appears who by biting the frog manages to save them, and this one carries with him a letter from Inugami, saying that the former inhabitants are Kemono frogs, that they are the cause of the deaths, and also a vial full of blood because they are attracted by it. So Akira pours the blood into the water, and from it appear many Kemono frogs, and our Prota begins to give battle with the help also of the tanuki. And before all this Akira enters in despair, and from one moment to another she manages to freeze the whole place, ending with all the Kemonos. Then a giant frog appears, apologizing to the tanuki for the damage caused all this time by his relatives, but now they will be able to rest in peace. Later, we meet Mihai, who is a vampire with superhuman strength, who works for the Inugami Rarity Counseling. Later, the protagonist meets Kan, who is no longer interested in his head because Inari doesn't need it and is sad because she was replaced by another kitsune. But he offers her to go to the Unigami to work for him, but she tells him she can't because a kitsune can't be subordinated by a tanuki, and he leaves, but says he'll be back in a while. The Prota returns and they have a mission, which is to go to the Bug Bite Company where they must look for information about the suicides by their workers, since there were a few suicides in the past, but suddenly there were no more. They manage to enter the place thanks to the ability of Shiki, who can become invisible, and at that moment one of his employees starts to go crazy, saying he wants to quit. But Kaga appears, who is the manager of the place, who calms him down and takes him to a place where there is this Kemono fly, which attacks him by eating his brain. And the boy goes back to work in zombie mode, and it turns out that this is the reason why suicides stopped being registered. And Mihai, with his remote control car, starts making noise to annoy Shiki, and a Kemono finds the car and notices Shiki's presence, and when he is about to attack him, Mihai manages to electrocute her with the car, and does all this to have fun and annoy Shiki. While the protagonist and Akira encounter the other Kemono, but in an instant they manage to defeat her. On the other hand, the fly Kemono wakes up, but Shinki also manages to hold her with his web and defeat her. Then the other three arrive, and leave the two Kemono trapped in the web, but suddenly Kaga appears, who decides to consume the power of the other two to become much stronger. And it seems that the boys are no match for her, but Tranku, because the protagonist manages to transform and in an instant manages to defeat the fly. And then there's this guy named Nobimaru who works for Inari, and he burns the fly so that there's no evidence left. Then they all return home and the protagonist is happy to have friends, but he remembers that he left Kan waiting, so he goes back to her, apologizes, and she tells him that she had caught some fish for them to eat together. Meanwhile, Shiki tells Inugami to tell him what she knows about his parents. So the gang heads towards the village where Shiki previously lived with his uncle, to find out information about his parents. And while walking around for a while, they meet his uncle, Tadamaru, and he tells Shiki that his parents are actually dead. Then they all go to a hot spring bath and meet Nobimaru, who invites them on a walk to see the fireflies. Already in the place, Shiki has a memory that the day that his mother died, in a cabin he had found something that left him traumatized, and in the place Nobimaru comments that it can have relation with the events of Kemonos in the past, where time ago in the black market, a healing silk that recomposes the cells of the body was sold, and that Shiki's uncle was in the blacklist because it turns out that he used Shiki's mother to extract this healing silk and thus generate money. But he confesses to Inugami that she actually did it voluntarily in order to support Shiki. But suddenly this Kemono appears and tries to attack Akira, and Inugami manages to stop him, but he manages to poison him so he can't use his weapon. And also many Kemonos appear, and his uncle tells him that they are Shiki's brothers, that they are the result of the experiments he did with his mother, to which they repeat phrases that she said to Shiki when he was a boy. The protagonist gets angry with the intention of attacking his uncle, but this girl named Aya appears and calms the Kemonos and tells Inugami that she will cure his arm. While the prota kills some Kemonos, this giant monster appears, and we see that Kabane starts killing everyone. Inugami manages to cure his arm in the river, and the prota, having killed everyone, goes in search of the guy, but the girl stops him and tells Tadamaru where he left the cocoon she created, but he refuses. Inugami offers his services, and with the help of Mihai, manages to detect that he is at the bottom of the river. So Shiki and Aya head there, and he dives into the river and finds his mother, Kumi, sleeping. So he takes his mother and the little girl, and spares his uncle's life, but Nobimaru ends up killing him so that he won't commit such atrocities again. Then they all head to Tokyo to a hospital where they are attended by this old woman, who is a specialist in healing Kemonos, although well, because of the wounds she presented it's going to be a difficult task to heal her, and at night Aya goes to visit Kumi and Shiki thanks her for saving her, so her mother wakes up and we learn that they are brothers, so I'm happy for Shiki. Later, they meet up with the others, because Aya also wants to work for Inugami, and by the way she declares her love to the main character, and Kan also arrives and gets jealous of the situation. So they go on another mission, and they meet this Kemono, who is made up of parts of other girls' faces, because apparently she fell in love with a boy and wants to make him fall in love with her. So as the boys are good people, Aya manages to use her web to join her parts together and give her the appearance of a woman. Later, we see that Akira's brother appears, who is looking for her, and we see some memories of Akira, where she is with her brother in their village, and that her mother died giving birth to twins, and that her father was locked up in a cell. And we see that she feels useless in the group because she is a little clumsy, so she leaves a farewell letter and sets off in search of her brother, and she manages to find him, and it seems that he is a rather shady person. and he decides to find a place where they can live. So with his ice power, he creates this castle and freezes Akira's cell phone and leaves her locked up to go in search of food. Inugami finds Akira's farewell letter, who shows it to the main character, and he thinks that it may have influenced him to call her an idiot. So the three of them go to look for it and arrive at the place, where it's full of people because it's obvious that there's an ice castle. And Yui appears, attacking everyone to get them to move away. And Inugami shoots him and realizes that he has the Null Stone, which is similar to the stone that the Prota has, that he found it in his village, but it turns out that it is forbidden to take it out of the place. So he thanks him for taking care of his sister, to which he goes to the castle and tells his sister to come down, and finds that he froze the Protas, with the simple fact that he does not leave, just Tranku because they are alive. Inari and Nobimaru arrive on the scene, and our protagonist also manages to defrost and transforms. But well, Akira pretends to be a fool and gives him to understand that she hates him, but only so that he doesn't fight with his brother, so he leaves. And while the Prota tries to unfreeze his friends, Inari arrives, and Inugami through the alpaca tells him to go after Akira. So when he goes there, Nobimaru is also there, and they both join forces to fight against him, and he manages to make an ice armor to avoid being killed. So they fight, and when they are about to give him the final blow, Akira gets between them to avoid being attacked, and in that, Nobimaru tells him that the Null Stone is taking over Yui, so Akira and the Prota manage to remove the stone, joining it with the Stone of Life, and both merge. So later, we see that they are reunited, and Aya manages to heal Yui's wounds, and comments that the stone was already in the village before it was founded. Then Inugami begins to tell her the story of the Kemonas, that more than 1,000 years ago, humans and Kinomos had a war, ending with many lives, and because of this the Kemonas erased the memories of humans about the incident, and to prevent it from happening again these stones were created, to be passed from generation to generation and preserve the balance of power. So, with everything settled, the Muchakos make the passes. And finally we see that our Prota and Inugami go on a trip to investigate about his parents and also about another Kemono stone, to which Khan also appears to join them on their journey. So this is the end of Kemono Jihen. If you liked the summary, don't forget to give me your support by subscribing, liking, and commenting about the anime and the summary. See you next time, people.